Chapter 11, A Tricky Situation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This was the best description of what was going on here. After so many years of suppression, the first time Barry read a Phoenix Spirit-based incantation, her dormant spirit rejoiced and showed scary signs of vitality. But that wasn't the problem here. The problem was that the two of them stood at the outer border of the Blessing Forest, in the middle of the main route linking the forest with the academy. It wasn't the matter of monsters alone, but also other kids from the academy would definitely pass through here in the next hours. Why did it end this way? As he knew he would be in deep trouble the moment people discovered the two of them, William had to make a choice. Either to abandon Barry or to do something about their current situation and help her in such a weird situation. Of course, he chose the latter. Without much hesitation he pressured on himself and carried the stiff and heavy body of Barry on his shoulders. Before carrying her, he looked at the papers in her hands. He tried and found out to his disappointment that taking the papers away from her hands looked impossible without tearing the papers up. So, he had to let her keep the papers for now and moved in a different road away from this spot. However, just as he carried her for less than 500 meters, he realized that he made a grave mistake. Hoof. Hoof. My body can't take it anymore. Hoof. Hoof. As he carried her around, he got tired so fast. He overestimated the condition of his body. At this moment, it was impossible to keep moving her body like this. Sorry about that, he left her standing on the ground, inside an open space with a small running water stream, but if I tried to take you with me, we both would be doomed. He took out the flaring signal of help without any more hesitation and used it. Before long some guards would come and rescue her for sure. The academy had many guards standing on duty around the forest. From such a small distance from the academy main campus, the rescue team would be here in less than a few minutes. As he did that, he started to run with his highest speed. Worrying about monsters attacking her wasn't an issue. After all, this part of the forest was constantly cleared of any strong monsters. And weak monsters would hesitate to come near such an oppressive aura of Barry. Just after a few minutes of his departure, he could hear many voices coming from behind. He knew she was saved and now he was ready to start his delayed work. He came here to train and kill monsters, to collect monster cores and different monster materials. Despite him being so weak at the moment, he wasn't out of options. The type of monster he aimed to kill was called the Scarlet Monkeys. They were famous for their big numbers and weak strength. But even with their weak strength, the numbers they moved in made it hard for a single spirit master to hunt them down alone. Scarlet monkeys were famous for their scarlet fur, monster cores, and also a sort of needle at the end of their tails. Collecting all this would make him gain at least 100 spirit crystals per monster. So, if he killed 100, he would obtain a fortune without doubt. These monsters usually moved in large groups, each with numbers over 50. They were attracted to blood, and that made them very violent and dangerous in this forest. Imagine if a group of spirit masters just killed a monster. They would be weary and tired. But instead of resting and recuperating, they had to be on guard from any sneak attacks from those monkeys. Annoyance was the term that accompanied such monsters. With their large numbers, high agility, and their love for sneaky attacks, they were the enemy of many disciples at the academy. But that wasn't the case for William. William had a way to clear them out even with his weak strength. But he had to prepare first. The first thing he did while running forward was to inspect the ground. He was looking for a sort of plant, very common and with little uses in the spirit world. It was called the Elaptica bullosa, or the red-leafed flower. It was famous for its beautiful look, making them even sold as gifts from boys to girls. Large curvy petals, with faint redness in the center and white all over, long thin stem with red leaves which gave it its name. It's good to have people ignorant about some valuable things sometimes. As he walked through the forest, he found many of these flowers. He wasn't polite and gathered a good number of them. At this moment he had to envy Barry again for having a storage bracelet at such a young age. If he had such a gear, he would instantly store all the flowers he met. But as he was limited with his bag, he couldn't store more than 50 of them. It's enough for now. Helplessly he stopped looking for the flowers and started to focus on the area around. I recall there were some sort of small hills scattered in this region, he muttered to himself while examining the place. The darkness in the forest was much deeper than the outside world. But using light candles was a grave mistake. Monsters were sensitive to human scent, but they were more sensitive to light in the darkness of the night. So, he refrained from using one and kept walking ahead guided by his old and rusty memory. In his past life, he visited the forest many times to help other disciples as a porter. Saying he knew the forest like the back of his hand was an exaggeration, but saying he would know a little about the famous hunting spots here was a true statement. Of course, that was only applied to the outer part of this forest. The deeper parts were still a complete mystery to him. His plan was simple. He would use part of his knowledge to his advantage. Luckily this wouldn't need any strength or consume spirit power. There it is. After cautiously and slowly walking for almost an hour, he finally found what he was looking for. Standing a few hundred meters away, one could see this small hill like a dark behemoth lying in the middle of the world. Chapter 12 Scarlet Monkey Monsters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. William moved directly towards the top of the hill. The first thing he did was to clear a spot of any plant at the center of that top using his rusty sword. After doing so for half an hour, he finally cleared enough space for his next step. Without hesitation he injured his left hand and let the blood drop over his fingers. Then he started to write some letters belonging to a weird language, encircling the area he just cleared, using his blood. These letters looked a bit weird, and anyone looking at him right now would suspect they even meant anything. But William knew the meaning of these letters. He was laying down some sort of protective spell surrounding the central region. Done. After finished, he didn't wrap his wound and instead went towards the sloping side of the hill. He wasn't worried for his blood to attract those monkeys. After all, he wanted them to come. As he reached the edge of the 20 meters tall hill, he took out one red-leafed flower, squeezed it with his bloodied hand and let the blood mix with its fragrance and fall on the ground. It was unknown to people of this world the magical features of this flower. If mixed with blood, it could turn into a ticking bomb, enough to cause a small explosion. Of course, the stronger the blood owner was, the stronger the explosion became. But even with his current weak condition, he was sure the explosion this flower would create was enough to kill a couple of monkeys at least. He had 50 flowers in his bag, in addition to many more he found on the top and side of the hill. It took him 10 minutes to prepare everything. Once done, he started to write another weird symbol on different places around the hill with his blood. It's ready. After exhausting all his flowers, he went back to the central zone he cleared before in wide strides. Just moments ago, he could hear the swift rustling noises of the leaves around, marking the arrival of his prey. As he went back to the top, he found the area he cleared and left his blood marking its border showing little changes. Up there he found a faint glistering dome that appeared to cover an area of 10 meters radius. He was sure he was the only person able to see this. After all, this protective dome was made by his blood. It was an invisible shield, created using old runic symbols of a long-fallen spirit master empire. The bombs and the shield didn't consume his spirit force, but they consumed a big portion of his vitality. At this moment, he was staggering to keep himself walking erect towards that dome. But once got inside, he couldn't withstand it anymore and crashed heavily on the ground. He struggled to sit and tried his best not to close his eyes. The first thing he did next was to circulate his scarce spirit power inside his body. One had to know that William obtained a huge encyclopedia of knowledge regarding the spirit world. If he could produce 2 top-grade training manuals for Barry to use on a whim, then he had more suitable and far formidable manuals for himself. But his low spirit power was the main problem he had at the moment. Not to mention his spirit being in the mud phase. So, he only circulated his spirit power in the most simple and basic way. Screech, the monkeys announced their arrival by their distinguished voices. William wasn't worried about them following him inside the dome. After all, this invisible shield didn't only block vision, but all the five senses as well. These scarlet monkeys were simple-minded monsters. If faced with far intelligent ones, he might be worried about getting discovered. Sitting up there allowed him to observe the large number of the incoming group of monkeys. He didn't know if he should laugh or cry, but the large amount of blood he used so far managed to attract not only one group but three. He estimated his trophy this time to go to around 300 monsters getting killed. Yet he waited, patiently letting the monkeys climb up and scout the hill with interest. After all, once he started his attack, the monkeys far away would instantly retreat. Even if they were dumb, they still had their survival instincts. So, he waited, patiently waiting for more monkeys to climb the hill. The monkeys acted like any typical monster, acting slightly cautious but still daring. In less than a span of 5 minutes, the entire hill was filled with monkeys. They could smell blood but couldn't find any living monsters or humans here. Not even a corpse was found. Boom! As the entire hill was covered, it was time to hit them. He simply activated the blood link he got with the symbols he left behind. And the next moment lots of explosions appeared, wreaking havoc among the large number of monkeys around. Even with such the weak strength he got, the many flowers he used and scattered all around turned the entire hill into a scorching piece of hell. William felt the entire hill trembling faintly under the might of his attack. So, it was expected what happened to the monkeys. Those who got hit directly were killed. As for those on top of the hill, they panicked and ran all around, trying to get away by running through the scorching side of the hill painted with orange fire on such a dark night. Screech, 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 asterisk, they screamed in pain before they all fell to their death. William kept himself inside his invisible shield and waited for his vitality to recover. His shield was able to stand almost for 10 hours straight without problems. Yet if it was discovered by anyone, then this shield might only withstand attacks for much less time. That was his sole worry, for the monkeys to accidentally discover the shield. But against his worries, the monkeys were only driven by their survival instincts, and ran all down the hill, to be killed by fire. They were dumb monkeys indeed. What he feared next was for such noise and blood sent to attract more formidable monsters. Even with the loud sound of the raging fire, he could hear some scary noises from time to time, coming from the direction of the forest. Yet not a single monster dared to break through the thick veil of fire. The fire kept running wild for a long hour before it finally died down. Yet the devastation left behind was really terrifying. An area of over a kilometer in radius was now painted in black, with many leftovers from the fire expanding to the areas of forest around the hill. Chapter 13 Shocking Discovery. You are listening at novelfull.audio. William knew this fire must have been stopped by monsters lurking in the forest. Or else the fire would simply keep moving outwards and expand in time to cover a vast stretch of the forest. Yet his goal was reached. As he finally could freely move, he stepped outside the protective shield and started to examine the world around. Utter silence. There wasn't a single sign of life in this zone anymore. William wasn't a lover of destruction, but he had no other choice but to do so. Time to reap the loot. As his goal was reached, he wandered around and gathered the monster materials. His left hand was still paining him. He stopped the bleeding temporarily by using part of his white clothes as a tight bandage. Yet he missed his abnormal healing abilities, a privilege of being a strong spirit master. Such a wound would take days to recover, if not an entire week. Yet that didn't prevent him from claiming his rewards. After all, he put this point in mind when causing such a wound, making it on his left and not right hand. However, he never expected something else to happen when he started collecting the monster materials. The first monkey he met was burnt and covered with a layer of blackness, hard like a tree bark. From the look of it, the monkey didn't have any time to react when the fire came. It was the same case for many dead monsters here, and William didn't care for any of that. He simply used his sword to hit this shell-like layer to expose the fur underneath. The fur wasn't affected with such heat, or else it would be considered nothing worthy in this world. Just with a few hits, the black layer was broken apart and the bright scarlet thick fur appeared in front of his eyes. He used the tip of the sword to cut at certain places before he skinned the monster and stored the fur in his bag. He was thinking about how his bag would fit for all this loot. After all, he was sure he had more than 300 monsters here. Even if he had to drag all this with extreme effort, he wouldn't hesitate to do so. He would never leave behind what was originally his. After claiming the fur, he worked for the tail needle and then he opened the body and got out the monster core. The core was like the spirit crystal, yet it was filled with red and black colors. William knew the red belonged to the spirit power of the monkey and the black was the residual spirit inside the core. Just as he held it in his hand, he felt a strange resonance, like something buried deep inside his soul got stirred up at this moment. "What's wrong?" he frowned. He never experienced such a thing before. He held the sword in his right hand, the bag on his back, and the monster core in his left bloodied hand. Then without any warning, he felt a surge of heat inside his body, like his blood was boiling for unknown reason. Then the wound he tried to control before was opened again, making his blood gush out and cover the core in a large splash of redness. But that wasn't the end of it. Sizzle, sizzle, crumble, just in a span of a few breaths, the core issued a series of audible sizzling sounds before it started to get crushed. Under the shocked gazes of William, the core he just salvaged turned into dust, mixing with his blood before another bizarre phenomenon appeared. The blood once got in touch with the red powder moved back like it was drawn by a hidden force. The wound started to strangely heal, while his body kept burning hot without an explanation. William was more astonished when he examined his body. My spirit power. It increased slightly. How come? At this moment, he felt himself like a frog lying down in the bottom of the well. All the knowledge he had from his past life didn't help at this moment. He knew something was happening inside his body. It wasn't only limited to the spirit power's slight increase, but his body got a slight boost in strength as well. I need to test it again. This time he jumped towards the next monkey. He didn't care about the fur as he simply opened the corpse using his sword in a hurry to experience that amazing feeling once again. He knew of many ways to use the monster cores for increasing one's spirit power. Yet they all required many preparations and more resources. Not to mention they all paled in comparison to what he just experienced. This wasn't a simple way of using the monster core and turning it into strength. It was like his body devoured the entire core, using the entire spirit power stored inside to strengthen his spirit power and body. This time he was more attentive to what was going on, even closing up his eyes and trying to feel every tiny detail. The same thing happened again and this time he managed to see it clearer than before. Isn't it like the legendary devouring ability of that damned fox? As he noticed everything happening in his body, his mind started to link the missing dots fast. He felt a strange familiarity with this technique. Being his sworn and greatest enemy, William studied the unique abilities of that nine-tailed fox. To defeat an enemy, one must be fully aware of its characteristics and abilities. That was what his master kept telling him before. And one of these unique abilities, and the main reason behind the nine-tailed fox being this great even amidst the monsters, was his unbelievable devouring ability. He could devour monsters and use their spirit power to his advantage. That was like a cheat way in the spirit world, even among monsters. That was also one of the reasons that made that fox the not only the enemy to humans, but also being feared by monsters as well. Damn! I accidentally got his ability. Damn! This time William was really thrilled and excited. If he had such ability under his control, then forget about his earlier plans. All he needed to do was to consume monster cores and his strength would soar in leap and pounds. But that also meant he would face a big loss in his gains. The initial 100 crystal price for each monkey here would dwindle to around 20 crystals. Chapter 14 Going to the Academy Market. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But who cared? William didn't care about such loss. Losing spirit crystals for now and gaining a lot tomorrow was a profitable deal for him. This time he worked hard and fast, collecting his loot from all other monkeys scattered around. The bag on his back didn't permit for more than 10 monster materials to be stored within. Even after constantly consuming the monster cores on the spot, the bag was already filled. And yet that didn't stop William. By the time he finished absorbing all the monkey's cores, his individual strength showed a greater change than before. His stagnating and low spirit power increased to become 30 instead of just 12. 30 in just a few hours, not to mention he absorbed the cores of slightly over 300 monkeys to achieve that. But these monkeys were all low white grade monsters. When he finished, the loot he gathered was arranged behind him in a big pack he made roughly using broad tree leaves he gathered from the forest around. He didn't hurry to leave. After all, the thrill and excitement of getting strong in such a short time was really priceless. Damn! I swear even my master would have cursed if she was here with me, he laughed out of happiness before considering something. Despite his gain, he knew the spirit power he got from these monkeys' cores began to be thin and useless after crossing the 20.5 mark. What if I use the crystals I'll gain to buy higher monster cores? Forget about white cores, even bronzed cores might be a bit pricey, but I believe a single one worth more than 100 of those white cores. And these higher cores will give me more spirit power for sure. As he thought about this, he suddenly felt how blessed that fox was. Just by this single ability of his, William was now eyeing the world in a different way. Time to go back. As he finished wrapping all the loot inside a primitive-looking bag made of broad leaves sewed together with wooden ropes he gathered from nearby intact trees, he started to drag all this back to the academy. If one looked from far, then he or she would be shocked. A single human with a fragile body was dragging an astonishing large pile of loot like he was dragging a hill behind him. But that wasn't the main issue bothering William at the moment. He feared what would this scene cause inside the academy if seen by other disciples. Guards were elite disciples and even masters inside the academy. But luckily for him there was no one back when he returned. What he didn't know was that the incident that accidentally happened to Barry was shocking the entire academy right now. Once discovered, the group of guards instantly took her stiff body back to the academy higher masters. They examined her body and found no reason for the current bizarre status she was in. Being puzzled and fearing that something bad might have happened to her, the masters fetched the news back to her clan. In the next span of hours, the academy's main headquarters was bustling with activity. Barry's father was about to go insane when he discovered the strange condition of his beloved and treasured daughter. He sent for many physicians to come and examine her, but with no result. No one had ever seen such a weird condition before. With such a lack of knowledge, he really went insane, shouting and threatening even the academy's big masters with a brutal war if something bad happened to his daughter. His daughter might be considered a crippled spirit master in the eyes of the academy. But they would never dare to risk an open war with the Fire Dragon Long clan. They weren't afraid of this mad father, but the terrifying grandfather standing behind him. They all prayed that nothing bad would happen and the young miss would get awakened before the news reached that scary grandfather of hers. Or else. Even if she woke up later and became fine, things might be beyond salvation by this time. As the one behind all this mess, William was oblivious to all this. He returned to his simple cabinet, feeling lucky to not meet anyone during his return journey. Once he arrived there, he started to sort out how to store everything inside his bag. Seeing how huge his gains were, he had to take out everything, literally everything, even his bed, out of the cabinet. This was the only way to clear enough space for his loot to be stored inside his cabinet and start organizing things there. After finishing, he had limited space for him to sleep inside. Despite that, he wasn't feeling down at all. Instead, he started to count his own gains from this night and how to buy further cores. Out of his excitement, he stayed awake until the next morning. Just when the sun slightly rose up in the sky, he packed all of his gains together, carrying them with wide strides towards the bustling main market of the academy. The academy wasn't just a place for teaching. Without a strong financial foundation, nothing could resist the brutal effect of time. On one side of the academy, just near one of its main gates, a big market was allowed to be present there. To prevent anyone from sneaking inside the academy and disturbing the disciples and masters, a big wall was constructed inside, limiting the space of that market and allowing the guards to watch over it easily. The journey to the market took almost an hour. And despite never meeting anyone during his walk, he didn't notice any of this. His mind was pretty occupied with the limitless potential of his newly discovered devouring power. William examined his new strength after sorting out everything he gained from this trip. And he never got tired from examining and testing his spirit power. He estimated his individual physical strength to go beyond what his spirit power reached. Also, during this short period of time, he gained 5 more spirit points, meaning his body was still digesting the cores it consumed. He dragged everything he gained from last night until he got closer to the market. And there he started to meet a few disciples. The scene of him dragging that big pile with great ease astonished those who passed by him. He was a porter in the academy for 2 years already, helping a lot of disciples during their daily classes. Even if the disciples wouldn't bother to recall his name, they would definitely remember his face and recognize his white porter uniform. Seeing his abnormal strength made them all puzzled. Porters were famous for being weak and vulnerable, yet this kid was showing evidence that defied such logic. William didn't bother with them. After all, he planned to increase his strength fast using his gained crystals. He would aim to hit the 100 mark and enter a new realm from there. Chapter 15 Striking a Good Deal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. William noticed these gazes falling on him but didn't care about them at all. He kept walking towards the market without batting an eye towards anyone around. What if others wondered about what went wrong with him? They didn't even spare an eye for him before. Why would he bother with those who never bothered themselves to help or care for him before? Just as he arrived at the market entrance, his appearance attracted the attention of more eyes. It was still early in the morning, but the market was open with many sellers waiting for disciples and masters to come and buy from them. "Excuse me, my friend, are you here to sell those items?" Just as he walked past a few stalls there, one of the merchants got over his surprise and moved to warmly welcome him. He was a fat and short guy, in mid-40th, and looked like a man who lived long and saw a lot. His movement was fast, much faster than what such a big body would allow. The look of respect he gave to William made him feel like he was the best guy in the entire world. This was a standard trick of merchants, making anyone feel like he was the best out there. But to William this didn't matter. All he cared about was to get the best deal for his things and claim more crystals out of this deal. "Yes, what will you offer for all these?" William wasn't feeling tired at all. His excitement dulled his sense of fatigue, making him only crave to get his wealth and purchase monster cores. William opened his bag slightly while exposing what was inside. He stepped aside and let the merchant examine his things. Well, for a single fur it's worth 12 crystals, the seller was excited to get such a good deal in the early morning. But he wasn't planning to make it easy for the young William. Strength wasn't the only thing of value in this world, age and appearance were also important. In the eyes of such an experienced merchant, he measured William to be one of those disciples who got admitted into the academy from weak clans and poor families. He came alone, dragging everything on his own. He had no entourage, no porters to help him carry all this loot. He was also young, only 8 years old, looking fragile, and wearing the useless white uniform of porters. Which meant he was NA.VE and inexperienced to even miscalculate about uniforms and pick the wrong one up. It never crossed the merchant's mind that William didn't make a mistake to select his clothes and he was a real porter in the academy. After all, porters weren't allowed to keep anything from helping their masters. And for such a disciple to come with this loot meant he had strength beyond what porters should have. As for the monkey needles, each will be sold for 2 crystals, the merchant added after putting a fake struggling expression on his face. No deal, yet the swift and firm decline from William came to crush all this merchant's dreams. The fur worth at least 20 crystals, and the needles worth 5, he made his offer before adding a threat, if you aren't going to buy, then clear the way for me. I don't want to waste my time on shitty deals. He didn't even show any respect with his words, and he started to move to close his bag, intending to keep looking for another merchant. He knew the value of the furs and needles might not amount to much. But their real prices were much more than what this stingy merchant offered him. Wait, please wait, young master, the merchant instantly panicked. He felt like his luck was turning to worse. What about 16 crystals for each fur and 4 for each needle? The merchant didn't want to lose such a valuable trade but didn't want to suffer a loss either. William knew this was the basic price of the market. But this was in case he was selling only a few. His old experience showed up as he said in a firm resolve. Not a single crystal short of the offer I gave you. If you aren't willing, I believe many are. Showing empathy for merchants was a grave mistake. He knew merchants would never strike a losing deal. Okay, I'll get them all, the merchant inwardly cursed. Who said age mattered? This 8-year-old kid was acting like an adult. Even a hard one to deal with. They are all yours then. As he got what he wanted, William was in a better mood. Get someone to count them and prepare the crystals for me. Sure, the merchant didn't show any of his inner thoughts over his face or attitude. Come and have a seat. May I know what's the name of the young master? William didn't mention his family name. After all, he knew his family wasn't a big thing to use in front of such a sly merchant. The merchant wanted to know William's family name so he would strike a deal with him later. Something told the merchant that this young kid's visit to the market wasn't the end, but simply the beginning. Knowing more about the background of his customers was the standard move he and other merchants loved to take. By knowing more, they'd know the true value of the ones they were dealing with. And that would help a lot in evading any future trouble in disrespecting the descendants of big families or showing more respect to the ones who hailed from weaker and nameless ones. But William simply refused to introduce his family to him, leaving this merchant with nothing else but to deal with cautious towards him. Alright, here are the crystals we agreed upon. After sitting inside the wide stall and drinking a fragrant cup of tea that was worth a dozen of crystals, the merchant returned with a bag filled with the agreed price. Thanks. William didn't even open it and simply shook the bag to know how much was within. William used his own experience to the number of crystals inside with the weight of the bag. And this simple and natural move of his attracted the attention of the merchant's keen eyes. One had to know there was a large number of crystals inside. Using only weight coupled with the sound of crystals clashing against each other was a sign of how experienced William was in dealing with wealth. Do you have monster cores to sell? As he finally got his small wealth, William was impatient to try his own theory and test it out. We have all kinds of cores. What grade do you seek? Having the means to get back a few of what he paid, the merchant's smile became genuinely wider. I'm looking for white cores, 5 at least, any monster will do. William slowly started his own conditions and the merchant kept nodding before he vanished inside the stall and returned with a smaller bag. Here, each will cost 100 crystals each, the merchant said with a bigger smile and better mood. Just in a span of breaths, he managed to get back 500 crystals. William finished the deal and hurried back to his cabinet. From this day onward, he would solely focus on one thing. Getting stronger. As a porter he had to go and work for many hours each morning. But he decided not to stick to such a schedule. Just by his current 30.5 spirit power, he could simply enroll in the academy as an official disciple. So why would he bother about something like working as a porter again? serving others and wasting his time instead of training and getting stronger. Not to mention he aimed to climb higher than this. He decided to start with these 5 cores as a test. If his ability worked, then his daily life would change. He was just worried his ability might not work on all monsters, and that might be a problem if he failed to absorb these 5 crystals. But if this worked out, he'd rather spend his night hunting monsters in the forest, and during the day he would train after selling and buying monster cores. But there was one simple problem he had to solve. The academy wouldn't allow him to stay inside its doors without serving a purpose. So he had to show up his strength soon and got himself enrolled in the academy as an official disciple. For a porter, a weak and useless porter for consecutive 2 years like him, turning into a formal disciple of the academy would create an uproar. This was simply unheard of. L.C. William knew that would happen. Instead of worrying about that, he decided to work harder to give everyone not a shock but a scare. He wouldn't try to enroll in the academy right now but would wait for a week before going to assess his spirit power. His target was to enter the second-year class of the academy, the class accepting kids with spirit powers above 100, the Bronze Spirit Master class. He aimed to cause an earthquake in the academy. As his master always said, "If you are going to do something, make sure to do it with style." Chapter 16 Trouble. You are listening at novelfull.audio. William returned to his empty cabinet with running more than walking steps. His poor belongings were on one side outside the small cabinet. So, he had to lift them in, and that took him roughly half an hour. Once finished, he couldn't wait any longer. Time to test things out. He didn't even spare a glance over the bag full of crystals. He took out one of the 5 cores he bought and used his weak sword to reopen the wound on his left hand. The wound was already healed during the past hours, leaving behind a faint thin-lined scar. Once blood gushed out, he impatiently waited for the miracle to happen. But he was doomed to be disappointed. How come this doesn't work? What he feared the most happened. After testing over the 5 different monster cores he bought, he finally realized something was wrong. He tested this method last night over hundreds of cores, none ever failed. Let me think calmly first. He tried to control his emotions and thought rationally about this. And soon he found what went wrong here. These monsters weren't killed by me, he said while looking at the blood staining the clothes he wore. So, I need to kill any monster before doing this again. This was the crux of the problem he thought about, the first logical explanation he could find that made sense. He developed such a theory which explained why this method failed. But he wasn't sure about it. He needed to put it to the test first before raising his hopes once more. Or else he would have one more explanation as an answer. This method of devouring only worked over scarlet monkeys. But just thinking about this made him unwilling to accept such a theory. As his clothes were ruined by his blood, the first thing he did was to change them. While eating the few pieces of bread he had, he started to think about his next move. If I was going to kill monsters, then I need more weapons and more preparations, he muttered while throwing the sword that had its blade rusted at some parts, irregular and dull at other parts aside. Killing weak monsters like those monkeys wasn't his aim anymore. Last night he gained a lot of spirit power, but he knew the reason behind that. He could keep killing monkeys, ending up with useless cores that would give him nothing worthy in return. His spirit power was already low, very low from the start. He doubted the same result would reoccur if he repeated the same method. Plus, he devoured hundreds of cores to get over 30 spirit points. His target was to get over 100 points and shock the entire academy. That meant 60.5 spirit points must be gained during the next week. Just depending over the white monster cores wouldn't help much and eventually they would lose their purpose. Of course, these were only his speculations. But regarding his vast experience from past life, who would say his thoughts were wrong? Considering everything, he knew he had to go back and buy a lot of things. After all, he prepared to go inside the forest and vanish during that week. If he dared to come back, the academy would put him under investigation as a result of declining his tasks as a porter. His only way out would be through testing his spirit power again. But before reaching his desired benchmark, he didn't want that to happen. So, putting aside the weapons and his tricks, he needed enough rations to keep him alive for all this time. Monster meat wasn't that bad in taste, but he sucked at cooking. He knew if he depended only on himself, he would end up being poisoned or make food that wouldn't be suitable to be eaten. I have slightly over 7,000 crystals. He checked the bigger bag where he found 100 small crystals and 7 larger in size and more glistering ones. Those slightly bigger ones were known as the basic crystals. Each was equal to 1,000 spirit crystals. I'm not that poor anymore. I can go and buy whatever I need, he muttered to himself before finally getting out. However, just after walking for 10 minutes, his path was blocked by a group of disciples. At this hour, the lecture started, and the entire academy was bustling with studying and training. However, for his luck, he ran into a group of disciples he shouldn't meet at this point. Well. Look at who we have here. Just as he saw that familiar face from last night, William knew this wouldn't bode well in the end. Hey Lang, wasn't your clan looking for any clue regarding your young miss? Unlike what William expected, Guanin didn't come directly at him. Instead, he called over a group of disciples standing not far from him. Come, I have an interesting piece of news for you. William didn't know what was happening, but he felt it wasn't good at all. A sly and dirty person like Guanin wouldn't do anything good, especially to him, especially after last night. William tried to move aside and bypass the blocking group of disciples led by Guanin. Where do you think you're going? But before he could take more than a few steps, one of the disciples moved and glared evilly at him. When William saw this look, he knew something bad was going to happen. Under the cautious gazes of William, he noticed the approach of the other group of kids. They didn't look any different from Guanin and their group, all were disciples of the 2nd grade in the academy. The uniforms on their bodies were the same. What do you want? It seemed the one called Lang didn't have a good impression of Guanin. His tone and attitude told William the two must be rivals, if not enemies. Come on, don't be like this when I'm trying to help. Guanin gave a sly smile before he pointed at William and added, last night I met the young princess walking away with that porter. If anyone knows what happened to her, then he should be the one. *T. At this point, William, who was oblivious to all this, realized what was going on. He knew that Barry would take a long time to recover, probably a day. He wasn't to be blamed to not link the dots early on. His mind was pretty occupied by what things he needed to purchase and prepare for his upcoming adventure. If he was in his right mind, he'd instantly have linked everything together, at least linked the name of Lang to the Long clan, and thus back to Barry. Hearing the words of Guanin made William realize what was that all about. He never expected things to become this complicated about what happened to her. Without the need to ask, he knew her clan and family must treat this as some sort of danger. He totally forgot about what happened to Barry before, never gave it another thought since leaving her behind. And Guanin was trying to throw him directly in the middle of such a hot spot. What a bastard! William inwardly cursed. He knew that what Guanin made up to frame him was real. No one was with the two when Barry ended up in such a weird state. It seemed Guanin wanted a payback for what happened last night, and so he decided to link William to such a mess. Unluckily for William, Guanin's accusation was right on the spot. He was the only person who knew what was going on with Barry. But would William let Guanin frame him this easily? Not a chance. What happened to young miss? He put on his innocent face while facing the skeptical gazes from the two groups. You should be the one telling us about that. Guanin harumphed. He felt like it was time to make someone else take his revenge without dirtying his hands. That was the kind of person Guanin was. Chapter 17 Telling a Little Lie. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Were you with Barry last night? Lang didn't seem to believe Guanin's words, but he asked to be sure. Yes, unlike what Guanin expected, William admitted it himself. See? I told you, ha ha ha, like winning the lottery, Guanin laughed wholeheartedly. I was with the young miss last night as she stepped in to save me from that disciple. William acted like he didn't know Guanin and returned the finger from before with another. You. Guanin was almost about to lose his cool, but he controlled himself at the last moment. After all, he was famous for being violent and vicious in the academy, a big bully to those weaker and lower than him in status and power. So, if he moved a finger now, he would just confirm the words of William. In his eyes, William dug his own grave by what he just said. As for Lang, he seemed to not be surprised by what he heard. From the white and simple clothes of William, he instantly recognized him as a porter. In Lang's mind, this fitted exactly the typical actions of Guanin. And the words of William also matched the kind-hearted Barry of his clan. Then what happened? Lang didn't change his interrogating tone, but William noticed the slight pause before his words. She was angry as that disciple who gave her dirty nicknames and humiliated her in front of his people. William didn't lower his finger or even shift his eyes away from Guanin. Do you want to die? Brother Lang, don't believe any of that bullshit. If Guanin could barely control himself earlier, then this time he hardly could. Just before he would move a single inch forward, Lang stepped in and intervened. Easy brother Guanin, Lang said in a tone that carried no speck of respect, I have to hear everything this kid knows before doing anything to him. He then intentionally paused before adding in a calm and domineering way, you know this matter is related to my clan. Guanin glared at the handsome features of Lang before he finally retreated. Lang just gave Guanin a hidden warning to not mess up with the important witness in front of him, and Guanin had to comply in the end. Guanin would be brave in front of people like William, but against someone like Lang, he'd know his limits. He was just this kind of a coward and a sly spirit master, a disgrace in the eyes of Lang and William. A true spirit master should lean towards facing troubles and challenges directly in the face, not evading them and leaning to use underhanded methods to achieve results. William inwardly snorted as he watched the dark expression at Guanin's face while walking away. You called this upon yourself, don't blame me for being honest. Humph. As if I didn't know about his toxic tongue speaking behind our backs, Lang finally revealed his true face once Guanin withdrew. William was a mere porter, a person that Lang would never put in his eye. The expression he made was a mix of anger and disdain. As William expected, these two had a long history of enmity. Forget about him, but do you know what really happened to Barry? Lang's face changed and became a bit gentler. When he saw the weird look over William's face he added. Barry is famous for her kind heart. She doesn't like to see anyone getting mistreated. Forget about him, he seems to hold a grudge against you from last night. Thanks for young master's understanding. William cupped his hands in a gesture of respect as it was the tradition of gratitude between spirit masters, but regarding young miss, she left after helping me and went deeper inside the forest. Even if William was touched by the kindness of Lang, he would never be foolish enough to sell himself out and spill out the truth. Oh, a look of disappointment flashed over Lang's face before he returned to be calm. Sorry to disturb you then. If I ever need a porter this week, I'll fetch for you. What's your name again? William knew Lang was trying to buy his silence about this incident using this empty promise. After all, if the news widely spread about what happened to Barry, many might take them as fools. Even if people like Guanin knew about what happened to Barry, the clan wanted to control the spread of news. The academy also wanted the same, or else dark-minded people might try to further muddle the water. Thanks for the young master's generosity, my name is William. Alright, see you later. William only heaved a deep sigh of relief after Lang moved away with his entourage. In fact, his little lie had a small flaw, but luckily Lang didn't notice anything. If what he said was true, then he was considered the last person to see Barry before what happened to her. If Lang thought deeper about it, took this matter a bit more seriously than he did just now, he'd have seen through this and have William come with him to the clan to get interrogated. Luckily for William, his identity as a porter served as the best cover-up for him. Not a single one would suspect a porter to do anything to a spirit master. And so William got out of this problem easily without having much trouble. I need to hurry and leave the academy as fast as possible, he knew Lang might be a bit careless. If anyone else from the clan's upper echelon heard about this story, that flaw would be spotted. William didn't think Barry would stay all this time in such a state. At this moment he was glad he didn't stay behind with her. William wasn't worried about discovering his little lie. Once Barry woke up, she would stand up for him. He was worried about getting his little lie discovered before Barry would wake up. The anxious family members of hers might do anything to unravel the entire truth. He only was worried about Guanin. That sly spirit master seemed to hold his grudges to the heart. This time it was his luck, but William didn't want to depend on luck for long. If he waited here for more than a day, Guanin might find any excuse to get him into trouble. So he decided to wrap everything he wanted to do here in one day, then leave without taking a single glance behind. As he reached the market again, he found the place more bustling with disciples and masters from the academy. He headed directly towards the merchant he dealt with in the morning. "Young master, what brings you so soon?" The merchant instantly recognized him, while looking in slight disappointment at the emptiness behind William. "I want to buy more stuff." William entered the stall and sat over an empty corner. And the merchant followed. "What do you need?" the merchant asked with a drooling expression on his face. "I want the Homo's clay, the scarlet vibrant ore, 100 light candles, and a strong bow." William narrated what he wanted. "The Homo's clay and the scarlet vibrant ore are all present here in large quantities. But the bow?" The merchant paused, showing a fake face of struggle. William knew this merchant was specialized at dealing with materials like crystals, cores, materials, and ores, not weapons. But he was a merchant, so he must know who was the best to sell good weapons here. "Just buy it and add your fees," William leisurely said. "I need a bow with a price not exceeding 1,000 crystals. A good one, not just a mere toy," he added while giving a serious look on his face. If he wanted, he could simply take a look around stalls specializing in selling weapons. But he'd have to waste more time and might not even get what he wanted in the end with the same price range. "Leave it to me then," the merchant smiled widely. After all, his fees would add more profit to him. "How many kilos do you want for the other two goods? What's the price of the kilo?" William didn't give a direct answer before adding, "And stop playing those little games with me. I hate people wasting my time." The Homo's clay was a fairly common material in this world. It was found just near big riverbeds, with few uses in alchemy. So, its price was fairly low. From William's old memories, he recalled the price wouldn't exceed 10 crystals per kilo. As for the scarlet vibrant ore, it was found in the widely scattered mountains all over this world. That ore was just like the clay, with few uses limited mostly to decorations. The ore was in a diamond shape, with bright redness that gave it scarlet name. Spirit masters tried to use it in forging, but whenever they smashed it or exposed it to heat or spirit power, it violently exploded. Without melting and hammering it, how could they use it in forging? So, it became useless, only used for its beautiful look. But in William's hands, anything useless would become extremely valuable. Chapter 18: Buying a Bow and a Bag. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The price of the Homo's clay is 11 crystals per kilo, as for the ore it costs 15 per kilo, the merchant said, and William knew he added one more crystal to each kilo. "Bring me 20 kilos each," but he wanted the merchant to help him with something else. So, he didn't make a fuss this time. "I also want a storage bag, one equipped with expansion and weight-reducing runes. This might cost a bit." The merchant paused before his mind worked and calculated how much wealth this kid in front of him had. "I don't have a suitable one for you, but I know a friend who has one." William knew what the merchant meant was that the bags he had here all cost more than what he could afford. This was why he let him have little profit before, to use him to find a suitable bag that wouldn't cost him much. Storage bags with runes engraved over them were used like storage devices. However, the difference lay in the big size of the bag, and its inability to remove all the weight. But thanks to that, their price was always lower than the storage devices. And that was what a price William could currently afford. "How much will it cost?" William calmly asked. "At least 5,000 spirit crystals," the merchant said. "With your fees, of course." William didn't let the merchant have his way this time. The price was already too much, and the merchant knew this from the start. So, the merchant could only nod. He knew if he became greedy and pushed for a higher price, that little kid wouldn't be able to afford it and would lose the entire deal. "Wait for me until I prepare everything for you." The merchant excused himself and didn't forget to make a worker to attend William with another cup of tea. The merchant took half an hour before he returned. He didn't carry anything but a black leathered bag with writings flashing all over it in silver symbols. It was a backpack, easily carried by 2 strips on the back. "Here, I got everything you purchased inside." William took the bag and felt how light it was. The bag seemed like it got nothing. He opened it by clicking on a red button on its center with his thumb. The bag must be linked with spirit power, and once done, he could easily examine everything inside and take anything he needed out. There was everything he purchased inside the bag without affecting its weight. William patted on the bag in satisfaction before playing a little with it, feeling its weight when he held it on one shoulder or both. Here, William then paid almost his entire wealth before leaving the stall and the happy merchant behind. He didn't even flinch when he did so. All this would turn into strength later on. As for crystals, he would find many chances to get more of them. In this deal he was left with a few hundred crystals. He didn't plan on keeping them for himself, as he still lacked something to do what he wanted. As he got out of the market, he used his old memories of the academy and went towards a certain direction. Like his cabinet, that direction led him towards the outskirts of the academy, but on the opposite side of it. To cover the distance fast, he started to even run. Even with running, he crossed the massive area of the academy in 5 hours. Just as he stopped, he was heavily panting. William got a slight increase in spirit power, but not enough to support him running all this distance without taking a few stops of rest. "I need to get stronger." As he stood beside a tree to rest, he started to examine the big building lying up ahead. It wasn't a grand single building, but it was more like a series of small-sized houses stacked together in a wide space. The highest part was only 3 stories high, and the entire compound was surrounded with a low-leveled wall. A big sign was hung over the main open gates. The forging department was written on it with big golden letters. Time to get it done. After 10 minutes of rest, he started to walk again. He bought the clay and the ore, even the bow. But what he lacked was the arrows. And he planned to forge them himself. This place was especially quiet during the rush hour of the normal academy day. After all, not many of the disciples or masters were fond of forging. The same went for alchemy. But William knew how valuable the two were in the world of spirit masters. Just 100 meters away from the main gate, he could clearly hear the loud bangs of hammers on anvils. Hearing such a familiar sound again made him smile without knowing it. "Hello, little brother, do you want to do something here?" "For which disciple?" As he just passed through the gates, a middle-aged woman stood in front of him with panting breaths. Her body was long, longer than him by 1 meter. Almost 2 meters and 20 centimeters tall. Long black hair curled on the back of her head, taking the form of a big rose, exposed arms and abdomen while showing off her strong muscles despite being a lady. William didn't know her. From that golden hammer emblem on the side of her chest, he knew she must be a master here. As she treated him nicely, William decided to show his manners to her in return. "Sorry to disturb the master, I'm here to do business of my own," William respectively said. But what he said made the lady frown. It seemed that forging left traces even on her face. Her smile looked hard to be described as one, turning her face ugly and not pretty like the sacred law in the girl's world. "Do you want to learn how to forge?" the master asked just to make sure she heard him right. She sized him up and down while saying that, not in any offensive way as William felt. He knew she recognized his status here from his clothes. And when looking at his fragile body, she couldn't help but add. "You know we don't limit anyone to come and try, but in your case." She paused as she didn't know the right words she should use to describe this awkward situation. Chapter 19 Spirit Master Vow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. She wanted to dissuade him from taking such a feat, but who told her William was this weak or simple-minded? "I know a bit of forging myself but didn't have time to come and try it before," he lied. After all, William would be considered a genius in forging compared to the standards of this world here. "I just want to use the free rooms to test my skills and make something I need." Okay, despite not believing a single word of what he said, she decided to stop her daily running session at this moment and lead him herself towards one of the small houses that filled the forging department. The place wasn't spacious, but it had everything William needed. An oven, an anvil, a table used for molds, plus a large amount of wood and ores used for the forging process. Once William looked at these items, he couldn't help but smile. He came here specifically for these items. But before he could do anything, there was a problem he had to solve first. That master stood on the entrance while folding her arms. The expression on her face was like, "Come on, show me how you'll do it." "Ahem, I don't want to waste my master's precious time," he cleared his throat while trying to act as respectful as possible. "I have nothing else to do," yet the answer from the master came to cut any path on him to kick her out. William couldn't believe he came all the way here to just be stopped by this master. William knew his ways of forging would be on another level of those used in this world. So if that master stayed there watching him, she'd discover how weird his ways were. And that might bring him trouble. I have something to confess, as he had no other way to kick her out, he had to handle the situation differently then. "What? You don't know how to forge, right? You were just playing and joking. What was it? A poker game? A do-or-dare game lost by your assigned disciple and you are just taking the burden off their shoulders." Once he said it, the lady's eyes shone in realization. All this time she never believed what he said. She believed he came here for anything else but to forge. "It's neither." William slowly shook his head before he put on his serious expression. "I have a forging master already, and he asked me to come here and do a task for him." "A master in the academy?" The lady's face didn't change much but her eyes looked sharply at William. "He is someone you might not know about." William might be rude in saying these words, but he had to continue. "He isn't one of the academy masters. But my master's teachings are his top secrets. If the master wants to stay, then I have to ask for your word to not leak what you see here." This was his bottom line. If she didn't agree, then he'd have to drop the idea of forging here and look for somewhere else to make his arrows. The lady kept her silent daggering gazes for a long minute before she broke in laughter all of a sudden. "That's fun," she said as if what she heard was some kind of a joke. "I, Alina, swear on my spirit that I will keep anything I witness here to myself." It was the sacred pledge, one of the toughest oaths in the spirit world. Unlike what William expected, this master seemed to be amused by the little porter in front of her and decided to play with him all along. She didn't flinch when she took such a serious vow. To her, she never believed a single word of what William said. She never expected for even 1 second that this little kid was able to do something she didn't know. She never believed he was able to forge in the first place. Great, once he got over his surprise from her unexpected action, William's features relaxed much. Now he could start working without any burdens or worries. The first thing he did was to empty his bag out of ores and clay. The appearance of the clay startled Alina, as they had zero usage in the world of forging. However, when she noticed the scarlet vibrant ore, she got instantly scared. What the hell do you think you're doing? Hurry up and take those dangerous cursed ores away now. Do you want to die? She couldn't control her fear and even took a few steps to the back. Who wouldn't be familiar with the devastating effect of using such ores in forging? Even if she was a strong master, she wouldn't risk it with such ores. Calm down, I know what I'm doing. William didn't explain anything as he picked up one ore and flipped it in his hand. The sight of the scared Alina was really amusing. These are going to explode once touching fire or spirit power. Alina felt that William didn't know how dangerous these scarlet vibrant ores were. Hurry, take them away. I know about that, William just said before he went to check the materials gathered in one corner, and I'm not that tired of living to throw away my life like that. Then why are you bringing them out? Alina didn't even consider that William could deal with such ores. Such ores were taboos in the world of forging. Many spirit masters lost their lives while experimenting on such ores. And the fear William showed was simply natural. I'll show you a great trick of my master. William picked up a few white-grade lodges before throwing them inside the oven. Consider yourself lucky to be here. This. Alina didn't know why, but the tone and attitude of William seemed not to fit his looks, position, and age at all. Fine, if you want to die then go ahead, but I won't let you harm our place. Once said that she took out a large ball and instantly ingested her spirit power inside. The ball buzzed as if it got alive and released an instant shield that enveloped the space inside this building. William looked around. That shield looked strong enough to even sustain the attack of a gold-grade monster. It covered him and things inside, protecting the walls of the building from any upcoming blast. This is my creation, Alina proudly said. Of course you won't be able to appreciate it. But it's enough to make sure whatever explodes inside won't leak outside. Okay, William shrugged as if this action didn't bother him at all. Alina was skeptical towards him. In other situations, she might have even kicked him away and never let him do anything. But what William said earlier piqued her interest, and she was famous for being a curious master. She wanted to see what William could possibly do with this dangerous stuff of his. Chapter 20 Shocking the Master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. William first used his spirit power to ignite fire. As the fire raged on, he went to the large number of materials he took out of his bag. He started to organize them first. He placed the clay on one side, the candles on another. As for the red ores, he placed them into two groups, one had 7 kilos and the other got 3. Alina made a bet with herself. She bet that William wouldn't last inside more than 5 minutes. Even if he had some forging knowledge like he claimed, he would never be able to survive the blast of the scarlet vibrant ores. She even prepared herself to intervene once he faced any danger. No matter what, a porter or a disciple, he was a human being in her eyes. But unlike what she expected, the first item William picked to use was the clay. The clay looked like a giant piece of blue slime. Despite having a soft and tender body, its weight was still there. The 10 kilos took a space of only 3 meters square, not too much to be honest compared with the clay's tender looks. He simply used bare hands to cut a piece of it. The clay easily followed his hand's movement and then he went towards a big pot made of special alloy and placed it inside. Do you have ready molds here? 4 arrowheads. William asked while putting the pot carefully over the raging fire. Here, with a wave of her hand, a 1-meter square mold appeared in front of William's eyes. It was made of special alloy that could withstand the high temperature of the melted ores. And it contained hundreds of spaces to form arrowheads. William checked the spaces and inwardly admired them. Each space was in the shape of a diamond, making the arrowheads slightly tapering at their ends. This wouldn't only give the arrows more penetrative powers, but also would help in increasing their flying speed and momentum as well. It's my personal mold for making arrowheads. Alina noticed the admiring gaze of William and couldn't help but boast, can your master have something good like this? My master. Humph, she is much more skilled than you may even think." Despite admiring Alina's craftsmanship, William knew if he had time, he would create a far better mold than that. Of course, he wasn't totally lying about his master, he really had a master in his past life. "Let's see what that master of yours taught you then." Alina took the insult harshly as she glared back at William. The latter didn't speak again and simply placed the mold aside for now. He then waited for the clay to melt. The Homo's clay was a famous material used in alchemy, but no one ever tried to melt it using direct fire like he was doing right now. Adding the clay to any recipe would help in refining its grade in a better way. But when faced with fire, not only it would melt fast, but some impurities inside would also be burnt away. The simply looking blue clay turned in a span of 1 minute into a sparkling blue liquid, even attracting the attention of Alina. To her surprise, the first simple action of William was something she had never heard about before. And that realization made her frown inside and seriously question herself about what he claimed earlier. "It's ready." As the clay turned into such a state, William carefully took the pot out of fire and placed it carefully over the specially designed table. Then he grabbed his scarlet vibrant ores and placed them one by one over the table in swift moves. Alina wanted to stop him out of her innate fear, but William moved really fast. In a blink of an eye, he managed to arrange tens of such ores on the table. Then he grabbed the pot and poured its contents slowly over them. Sizzle, like water poured on fire, the clay once touched the ores emitted a loud sizzling sound. It wasn't only this, but it also emitted strange dazzling blue light before the amount he poured started to slowly disappear. The scarlet vibrant ores absorbed all the liquid and slowly turned into dim scarlet ores. The earlier sparkling red light seemed to lose much of its vibrancy under the effect of the Homo's clay. And that was the secret William knew about the clay. The clay didn't have any upgrade abilities as alchemists mistook it for, it had a controlling effect that rivaled many other top materials that William couldn't possibly get for now. The scarlet vibrant ore's main issue was their uncontrollable intense inner energy. Once stirred by a stimulus, the ores would instantly explode, and their energy would grow out of control. By using the controlling feature of the clay, William forced such berserk energy to be stored within and turn into docile form. And that was his first step in handling these ores. Alina wasn't a normal forging master. Inside the entire department, she was considered in the top 5. Her senses were so keen, and she had rich experience in forging. The subtle effects of ores instigated by the clay didn't escape her eyes, making her open her mouth agape without feeling it. She was shocked beyond description. What she was seeing in front of her eyes right now was least considered a miracle in the world of forging. Didn't everyone know about the rich energy stored within the scarlet vibrant ores? Any forging master would dream about finding a way to control such a berserk energy and tame it under his control. But throughout the long history of forging in the spirit master world, not a single one ever succeeded to do so per her knowledge. And now that little porter in front of her, the one who simply appeared out of nowhere, just managed to do so. Simply like he was eating a meal. Once she controlled her shock, William managed to finish handling a large amount of scarlet vibrant ore. He next put another piece of clay on fire and started to pack the handled ores on one side. She wanted to speak and ask. At this moment, there were tons of questions raging wild inside her mind. But seeing how concentrated William was working, she refrained from doing so for now.